link to those particular domains. Okay, any questions about that? Okay. All right, first part we're going to talk about is PGP and self-reflection. In the evaluation handbook, this starts on page 16. Our PGPs are due by September 30th, and you have to do your self-reflection before your PGP, so that's kind of where we are right now. Everybody's getting their self-reflections finished and letting me know they're submitted. I've saw a list today. It looks like most people are either done or in process, so just want to get those finished as soon as you can, and then as soon as those are finished, we'll start scheduling PGP meetings. We'll work with you to set your PGP goal, and then that part will be finished. We've got to have all that finished by September 30th. So when we do that, we'll use those 7 steps there, reflect on current growth needs, and identify areas to focus on. Again, we'll collaborate together, use your self-reflection information. Heather and I were reading today that you can also use just information about you want to use just school data, classroom data, also to kind of decide what you want to focus on. If your classroom's really weak in a certain area, or you can already tell your kids are struggling with a certain skill, then that can kind of guide your PGP goal as well. So it can be connected, or if it's just something that you want to work on as a professional, that's okay too. It doesn't have to necessarily be connected to data. And then we'll reflect as we go throughout the year. We'll modify your PGP plan if we ever need to, and then you'll conduct your summative reflection toward the end. Okay. Any questions about self-reflection or PGP?
I have a question about self-reflection.
Yes.
We did that last year. Can we use what we did last year and just update it? Is that what you want us to do?
Mine was gone. When I went in to redo mine was gone. Was anyone's?
I saved the document.
If you saved it, I think it's gone in SITs. Is that correct for everybody?
Mine was there today.
Yours was there from last year?
Mine was gone last year from the year before.
Mine was gone, so Michelle got lucky. Yeah, so if it's there, or if you have it saved, you can certainly use information. I would think that it would probably be updated a little bit, just based on a year later.
Right.
But yeah, you can
use it as a base.
Sure. Yeah. Okay, any other questions about self-reflection? Okay. Remember, we've not had any issues so far with SITs, other than Cindy Banta has vanished from SITs, and Heather is a teacher, and we can't get that fixed. But as far as like losing stuff, we haven't had any issues this year, but that doesn't mean that we won't. So remember that if you want to just kind of make sure you don't have issues, type in Word first and then copy and paste into SITs. I'm not going to lie, I just did mine straight in SITs, submitted it, and I was okay. I just kind of crossed my fingers and went for it. But if you're more cautious than that, you may want to do it in Word first. I don't know, I guess how you're feeling that day. Okay, the next section is about observations. And this is probably the biggest part. There are 2 types of observations. Remember, there are evaluator observations, and then there are peer observations. And I'm on page 16 in the manual. There are changes this year to the evaluations. Recommendations from the evaluation committee were taken into consideration, and the number of observations that are required have been cut back for tenured teachers. So I think you'll see quite a nice difference there in that when we get to that. And then peer observations, we're going to do those differently this year too. There are lots of different recommendations, guidance from the State Department about how to conduct peer observations. I'm going to try a different model this year. There will just be a few people that will be conducting peer observations, so everybody won't have to do that. So if you don't hear from me about that, you don't have to worry about it. Someone will be in contact with you to schedule your peer observation. If for some reason you're not pleased with the person doing your peer observation, and I mean that could happen just because you could think that person really doesn't know much about my area, I'm going to try not to let that happen. But if you're not, you do have a say-so in who your peer observer is. So if you don't feel good about who your person is, then you just let me know. I'm going to try to work with some of the teachers that did TLN last year to be peer observers, just because they had a little bit of leadership experience in that from last year. So you will be hearing from somebody if you're someone who has to have a peer observation. We're not going to do the thing where everybody has a partner and a peer observation. And if you have to have one, someone will get in touch with you to get that scheduled. And again, if you would rather somebody else do it, just let me know. Okay. Any questions about just overview of evaluation, peer evaluator observation, and peer observation? Okay, moving to the second page. The models. So there are two different observation models. One for teachers that are not tenured and one for teachers that are. There's actually three because there's also one for K-tip, but since that's just Katie, we'll work with Katie on that. But for the majority of you, there's a 1-year model and a 3-year model. The 1-year model is for those people who are not tenured, and you have to have 1 full and 3 minis per year. 2 of the minis are by your evaluator and 1 mini by a peer. And then, this is the joyous, everyone that's in that 1-year model will look forward to. The 3-year model, where years 1 and 2, you only have a mini observation. That's it. And then year 3, which is your summative year, you would have a peer observation and a full observation. So in that 3-year plan, you get the same thing that non-tenured teachers are getting each year. Does that make sense? Okay. It's pretty exciting, really, I think. I think it's pretty awesome, personally. It makes it a lot more manageable. So just some... Yes.
When we're doing the minis, whether it be peer or
Yes.
youth,
Yes.
are those, do you write up full lesson?
No. Good question, and I think I have that in here. Yes. Okay. Down in the observation conferencing highlights, Cindy just asked about plan requirements. On the second bullet, it says lesson plans or evidence of cleaning must be demonstrated for all full observations prior to the observation. Our plan, that's the state requirement. Our plan is going to be that for a full observation, we're going to do a formal lesson plan, which is, those of you who I evaluated last year, I had sent you my modified lesson plan version. I'll send that out to everybody this year. It's just a little bit less intense than the K-tip plan. And then if it's a mini, we're just going to do a pre-observation form that's just like 3 questions, and it'll just ask what the standards are, what the highlights of your lesson are, just kind of to give us an idea of what we're walking into. There won't be a full lesson plan required for minis. Make sense? Yes?
I'm noticing that we're on year 1 of cycle, so what was last year?
Who's on year 1?
Me and Rita.
Okay, I'll get to that in just a second. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, last year was your summative, wasn't it? Didn't you do everything with me last year?
Yeah.
So now you're back on year 1. You were on year 3 last year. If you did your summative last year, you were on year 3. And then it rotates back to 1.
I just randomly got that as summative.
Taryn kind of looked at how long it had been since you'd had a summative, and then placed them the best she could to just kind of disperse them out. But I don't know, Lori. I don't know how she did that.
Okay, that's fine.
But if you had a summative last year, I put you year 1, so you'd start back and do the 3-year cycle. Okay. All right. Any questions about that so far?
No, ma'am.
Okay. For pre.
What those 3 questions are when you're doing it.
Yes. Yes. When we're thinking. Heather and I are thinking right now that when we do your PGP meetings, we'll go ahead and if you have anything in window 1, we'll go ahead and get that scheduled, set up, give you the forms and documents you need, everything right then. If you don't have anything in window 1, then as it gets closer to window 2, we'll make sure you have everything you need for the forms and lesson plan format and all that stuff.
So closer to the time we're...
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. The other little bullets on that page, full and mini observations require face-to-face post-conference. So no matter what kind of observation you have to have a post-conference. Pre-conferences aren't really required for anything. We're still trying to decide exactly what we're going to do as far as pre-conferences go for full observations, but for minis we won't have a pre at all. Okay? Okay. All right, student voice. So I'm down about halfway to, well, a little closer to the bottom of the second page. Student voice is starts on page 20 of the evaluation handbook. And that is the online survey collecting student feedback on specific aspects of classroom experience and teaching practice. All teachers will participate in state-approved student voice survey annually with a minimum of one identified group of students. The administration for each school will identify the group for each teacher to complete the survey. If you don't have a homeroom, if you do, it'll be your homeroom. If a given group of students should have to take 2 surveys, we can put them in different windows. That was one of my other big recommendations from last year because we had kids that were taking like 3 at once, and that wasn't good. And then accommodations do need to be given for students who have an IEP, which that would just be a reader, kids that have a reader. Those of you who had to do student voice last year, and it was a little overwhelming because we felt like we didn't really know much about it, I went ahead and put the student voice questions in your folder so that you can go ahead and be thinking about whether or not you are those things and getting to be them. Before and I'm just kidding. Kind of. I'm kind of kidding.
Teach the
Yeah,
vocabulary.
that's right.
They don't know what it means.
Yes. Teach them what those words mean because those are the questions on their test. Okay? All right. Okay, student growth. How are we doing? What's time? Okay, student growth. On page 21 and 22, it starts talking about student growth. Now, I would be lying if I didn't just be up front and tell you that this is the part that I think is the most confusing. It's the most complex and just challenging, I think. But basically, just like last year, we will write a student growth goal that has 2 components, the proficiency and the growth target. So if you remember, we wrote our goals to say, this is my skill, this many of my students will grow, and this many of my students will reach proficiency. And that'll be the same. Nothing has changed with that. For 4th and 5th grade teachers, what has changed is the state contribution part is now involved. And there's some discrepancies and stuff that I looked at yesterday as to how much weight is going to be the state part, how much is going to be the local part being the goal that you set, and how all of that's going to be considered and combined together. But basically, if you go on through the handbook, there are pages that explain how if this happens and this happens, you get this score. If this happens and this happens and this happens, you get this score. We're going to go through all that, but we're going to wait a little while to do that just so there isn't so much information given to you today. But we'll make sure, especially as we start to get our data back, 4th and 5th grade, we'll spend some time really looking at that so that we have the knowledge we need to at least understand it, even if we don't really like it. Okay, so for writing your student growth goal, the process is in about the middle of the last page. It says Steps to SGG Process. So I'm going to talk to you about the changes for that in just a second. I'm going to look at those steps for just a second. The first step is to identify the enduring skill that you're going to use. We'll talk about that part in just a second. Then you're going to establish your baseline, so kind of what's your starting point. Then you're going to set your goal. Then you're going to monitor progress, and then you're going to use the district rules and rubrics to rate your progress at the end, rate how your kids did toward that goal. Now, what's really different this year is that, last year we all did summarizing, a couple people did math, but for the most part, a lot of us did summarizing. This year, everyone will choose their own. So, there are these district established rubrics, and I'm going to send you the link to that in the Monday memo that'll probably happen at midnight tonight. I'm going to send you the link to that, but it's on that same Google JCS staff site. There's tabs up at the top of that, and one of the tabs is Enduring Skills. And in that, under that tab, all of the rubrics that have been developed for all of the different enduring skills are listed. Right now, for elementary, the reading ones are finished. I think the writing ones might be finished. They're still working on the math, and those should be up soon. So my hope is that by the time we get our PGPs completed, we'll be able to move into student growth goals. All of those rubrics will be finished. You'll be able to choose which enduring skill you want your kids to focus on, and then you'll write your goal based on that skill. Now, you'll have to have some type of pre- and post-assessment for that, around that skill, and we'll help you with all of that. But it isn't going to be that we all do summarizing again. That was just kind of a gift that we were given last year, and kind of this is how we're going to get started with it. So more to come about that. But if you want to see what the rubrics are going to look like, I put in your folder, there is a sheet, and it looks like this on one side and like this on the other side. Okay, so on this side, these are 2 English language arts rubrics. No, I'm sorry. These are the lists of the enduring skills for 1st and 2nd at the bottom, and then for 3rd through 5th at the top. And this is just showing whether or not there's a rubric already available for that enduring skill. Then on the back is a sample rubric, I think. Yes. And that is a 6th grade. No, I'm sorry. That's a sample rubric. So the front is the list of which skills they already have them for in reading, and the back is a sample rubric.
And all the enduring skills are based on standards. They have to be based on state standards. So if you recognize that, it's because it comes straight from standard 1.
And the math ones, so far, all of the math rubrics that are listed for 6 through 12 are written around mathematical practices. So I don't know if the K through 5 ones will also be based on practices, or if they'll be more tied to individual standards. I don't know. But right now it looks like they're using the practices to make those.
Are we going to use our own assessments then?
Yes. Yes. And that's just like one of those loaded questions that I just don't have all the information about yet, but yeah, you will. Whether it's just a written response, whether it's a multiple choice assessment, we'll just have to kind of look at, 1st grade and 2nd grade, one of the enduring skills is that foundational skill there at the top. We have lots of stuff that we could probably use to kind of help with that one that we're already doing. So if that's something you feel like your kids could...
But pre and post has to be the same. Right? Yeah, I mean, I think you said that.
I know that
but it does.
The exact same text.
See, I don't
We did summarize it. It should have been the exact same text.
I think it has to be the same.
I was saying text, like we did summarizing. Wide variation.
I think it's more about summarizing than we had someone that just gets into like you should do it and have a response on it.
Well, and what they really want, what they're really hoping to see is that it won't just be a pre and a post test, that it will be lots of data points along the year around that skill. So when you're thinking about it, think about something that will kind of be a thread that will go throughout your whole year, not be something that you just do and then put away, because you should have, and most of you did with summarizing last year, have, several little data points throughout the year that would gauge how students made progress throughout. It's not supposed to just be about the pre and the post.
Since we plan complete together, can we as a team have the same
Yes,
one?
absolutely. As long as yes, you can. The only big, catch there would be that it would need to be something that you felt all your kids could benefit from, because it needs to be based on the needs of your class. So, when I think about, let's just say 1st grade, there's 5 of you right now. I know that what Tabitha's kids are going to need isn't going to be the same as what Lindsay's kids are going to need. So we can't just say we'll all do the same one. It really does have to be based on where your kids are. Okay? I promise I'll talk to you more about that later. I just don't want to keep you here forever. I know that there are lots of questions about that. We're not quite there yet, but we will be soon. You also have in your folder just an overview of the domains. And then you have some information just about enduring skills. We're not going to go through that because we're running out of time, but just another handout I put in your folder. And then you have a couple of pages that are just for your reference. This page and this page that say, the first one says, some sources for writing enduring skills for student growth. Disregard underneath there where it says these pages provide a starting point for deciding how to write them, because really the district rubrics are going to have that information on them for you. But I did think that this front and back of just the reading anchor standards, and then this front and back of the math standards were really helpful. Okay? you have another paper in your folder, and Gina, I stuck a different one in yours. Gina, okay. Everybody else should fall somewhere on this front and back. Lori and Rita, on the back of this page that says Sample Student Growth Goals, it had a music, art, and health and PE one. It also had I also have one for consumerism if you decided to do something, I don't know, there's some different sample goals. But this was just a bunch of different samples to help when we get ready to write the goal. Alright, last couple things in the packet. Page 29 and 31 of the Green Handbook will walk you through the overall scoring. Again, it's complicated, and I'm not sure that we're in a place where we need to worry about that right now. I think I would worry right now about your reflection, your PGP, and then take a look at this page we're going to look at next and start thinking about what you want your observation to be in. But I would not start thinking about end of the year scoring yet. That's way far away, and we'll talk more before then so you know what you're doing. But that's on 29 and 31 in that handbook. And then the appendices is on page 51 through 80, and it has a lot of the forms and things in it that you may or may not use. If I tell you it's in your Green Handbook and it's a form, that's where it would be, is in that appendices. Just a few other little notes. PGES talks a lot about multiple measures and just making sure that we're using multiple measures for any decisions that we make. And what they're talking about there is just that effectiveness can't be determined by just one measure. And that is one thing that they have correct. It is that we can't just look at an observation to determine if you're an effective teacher. We can't just look at your PGP to determine if you're an effective teacher. We need to look at lots of different things, just like we do with our kids. And so that when you hear multiple measures, that's what they're talking about, is just lots of different sources. And then, and I know Karen said this last year, and I talked to all of you that I evaluated last year about this. The expectation of PGES is that experienced teachers will live and accomplish. Like if you are an experienced teacher and you feel like you're doing pretty good, your goals should be accomplished. And then you would still have glimmers of exemplary and maybe some developing in areas that you feel like you're still working on. But if you have been here for several years or been somewhere for several years, your goal is accomplished. If you get exemplaries, that's just added bonus. That means that's the areas of strength for you. And then it's also super important to look at the framework before your lesson. It is crazy to think that you would get all of those things into one lesson. There's no way. Which is why in that one lesson, even if you're an exemplary teacher, it's very difficult to have exemplaries in all those areas in one lesson, in one given lesson. So look at that document and think, okay, what are the areas that I really want to try to get to exemplary in during this lesson today? And focus, on those things, because without reviewing that, it's just, I think personally that it's impossible to do all of that in a lesson anyway. But there are a few things in there that I think you're like, oh man, I could have done more of that and gotten that to exemplary, So if you just kind of review that framework a little bit beforehand, and that's your big long book from last year. If you don't have one, I need to get you one that has all of the different domains and the information in it about that. Any questions about all of that? Okay, last thing. The NES observation schedule. So it looks like this. So the lucky ones of you that are in the top area, non-tenured, little jewels. Some of you, this is your last year in that category, right? Yeah. We'll make the most of it. And then those of you that are in year 1 of the cycle, you will have observations in window 1. So during your PGPs, Heather or I will be scheduling with you. We'll go ahead and schedule your first observation, whether it's a full or a mini. Okay? if you are in year 1 or year 2 of the cycle, you only have 1 mini this year. That's it, all year. And we just kind of dispersed them the best we could so that we could keep up with when they all were. One thing that we did do, for tenured teachers that are in year 3, your full observation had to either be in window 3 or 4. We put all of your fulls in window 3 because if you're non-tenured, your full has to be in 4. So we put our non-tenured teachers in 4, and we put our tenured fulls in 3. So there's some leeway from the state as to which window things had to be in. We took that leeway away a little bit to make us be able to give you adequate time when we have you, because if not, it would be a disaster. So if you see somewhere, oh, the mini could have been in window 2 and 3, but they have here that mine needs to be in window 2, there's a reason. We tried to make it to where we had no more than, 8 or 9 per window. So, which will be a lot more manageable this year with a lot more minis. But anyway, with this, I just need you to make sure that your name is on it. I need you to make sure it looks like it's the right year. If you weren't here last year, it wouldn't matter because you'll be up top anyway. If you were here and you had a summative last year, so if you had a full and a couple minis last year, then you should be at year 1. If you had just kind of a medium amount of stuff last year, you should probably now be either in 2 or 3. And in 2 probably. And then if you had, well, it was probably about the same for 2 to 3 too. So if you're a tenured teacher in year 3 of your cycle, then this will be a bigger year for you, but you'll go back to year 1 for next year, so that'll be really good. Okay? Any questions about evaluations? I still have tons of questions. We're going to work through a little handbook that will help us this year just to understand the domains a little bit better. My hope is that by the end of the year you will feel like you have a better handle on all of this. But again, it's year 2, so we're just going to do the best we can with it.
Did you get a printout of the indicators for special ed?
I did. Yes. Michelle just had a good question about special ed. What I got for special ed is a crosswalk. And it takes the regular framework and it makes it applicable to special ed. I will bring that to our first special ed meeting. And I'll make you all a copy of that.
Will that be for us?
I don't know, because I think it worked really well for you last year, because I think I tried it on yours. It just gives a lot more things to say in your, like, evidence that link to special ed. So I liked it.
Can I have it before we, I need to do mine.
Yeah, if you just remind me, I'll write you or I'll make you a copy this week. Anybody else have a question? Okay, you're done. If you'll leave your